Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be joined by with Angelica Garner, who works in the nonprofit sector as a success coach with the Student Veterans of America. In this role, she supports transitioning service members, veterans, family members, and caregivers as they maneuver through life post military life experience. I'm so excited to chat with you about this further. But first, let's hear a little bit about you. Hi, Angelica. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I'm so happy to have you here. But before we dive into all the questions I want to ask you about transitioning, let's talk a little about yourself. Like, can you tell us a little bit about a typical day in your professional life?
Oh, of course. Once again, thank you so much for having me. This is such an amazing opportunity. As a success coach, I work remotely from home. My hours are usually 9 to 5. In my role, I create resources that are dedicated to higher education and career readiness skills. I complete appointments regularly with clients, just making sure they understand their goals and creating success maps for them. And really, the greatest part of my job is helping them define their personal success.
I feel like you've done this before because you just breeze right through that. That's awesome. So that
Thank
must be so rewarding. I'm reading your highlight. I noticed though that you had a very different start to your career, that you started in public school. So as you were moving away from public schools to working with and coaching adults, did you have to go back to school for more education to support this pivot?
100%. So I started as a preschool teacher, absolutely love that population, but I knew I started to have a passion for adult education. Once I recognized that passion, I went back to school and earned a master's degree in higher education and student development, as well as an academic advising certificate. I thought both of those would be a great option in working with adult education students.
And as a bonus, I think you said that you used your husband's GI Bill to do that.
I sure did. And you know what's funny, Sue? I had no clue about that process. So I was so grateful to our education benefits counselors on base at Fort Riley, Kansas, that really gave me a lot of information on how to complete that process.
So it's kind of cool that you kind of come full circle to being,
Yes,
the advocate for and the coach for people at Student Veterans of America for people, utilizing the GI Bill. That's pretty awesome. Uh,
100% advocacy is so important to me, Sue. That is something that I cherish. Without advocates, where would we be? Mentors, without mentors, where would we be? So I'm so grateful for those who led the way for me so I can be the person I always wanted to be for others.
That's awesome. And you are preaching to the choir. So I feel like we could talk about this forever. So I think I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't pick your brain a little bit since we have you here. Since you do work with transitioning members and family members and caregivers, are there any trends that you've noticed among service members and veterans versus military spouses? I mean, what are the commonalities versus the differences in the transition?
I would definitely say for sure there are both commonalities and differences. The most popular being both uh, our military spouses really need inclusive experiences that really support their diverse needs. And for me, for military spouses, one of the differences is, well, the similarity is needing those inclusive experiences. But the difference is oftentimes with the transition with military members, they have a set schedule or courses that kind of guide them, very much like SFL TAP. For military spouses, we have to really search extensively for those resources. Thankfully, with you all, the National Military Spouse Network, USAA, Military Spouse Advocacy Network, there are so many organizations now, like Student Veterans of America, who are recognizing the needs of military spouses and creating spaces to help us thrive.
No, that's awesome. You're right. I mean, things are definitely getting better, but we still have a long way to go. And I appreciate you sharing your insights on the transition because we find ourselves talking to a lot of people who are in transition, either, separating from the military or their spouses are separating or retiring. And so I know that they appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us.
Yes.
So when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that when you yourself were looking for a job, you focused your job search on military friendly advisors. So do you have any tips? Could you talk about that a little bit? And then could you share any tips for military spouses on how they can find or recognize employers who are military friendly?
Oh, of course, of course. Ways to recognize if an employer is military friendly is if the employer takes the opportunity to not only recognize the experience of military affiliated individuals, but also creates avenues that are conducive to the differentiated needs of military affiliated individuals, really highlighting what they go through, providing steps and resources that really help them network and really lead the way post the military experience.
No, that's awesome. And I do want to know what makes employers military friendly. But first, I want to know more about your experience. Was it like, um, how did you how did you find your way to Student Veterans of America? Was it through networking? Was it just through cold calling? Was it just through putting resumes out there? What was effective for you?
Sue, I'm going to say a little bit of both. I'm someone who finds networking to be a key aspect to finding that dream career. I often tell folks when I found this role, it was a dream for me. Being able to utilize my passion for mentorship and advocacy and utilize that to have a career that pays a check. Who wouldn't want a career like that? That is something we all dream for, to have a passion job that pays a salary. So for me, it was networking. I found this role on LinkedIn. And it's so funny. I tell my boss quite often, I share this story with her. When they shared the description of the position, I ran to her message. I don't even remember if I applied for the job, Sue. I was so excited for the role. I messaged her, gave her my resume, and here we are 5 months later in this absolutely dream role.
I mean, that's pretty awesome because I think people still wonder if it's like an urban legend that you can find jobs on LinkedIn or if it really works. So it's nice to hear your testimony that no, it really works.
I love LinkedIn. I have honestly almost let go of Facebook and Instagram. LinkedIn is where it's at, Sue. Professionally, it has really grown my network and even finding opportunities to extend my education. So I am a proprietor of LinkedIn for sure.
No, and that's awesome. And I think it also, I remember that one of the biggest disadvantages for military spouse professionals was our transient lifestyle. So it was almost like every time you move, you lost your network. So I think that one of the best resources now is social media, in that we're now able to establish our networks before we move.
Yes.
And
That is
then,
so.
and you were able to find a remote opportunity, which is even better.
Yes,
So
I'm telling you, it's been a blessing, and that's what I prayed for. I'm telling you, I'm very religious, and really, I set these goals and these standards, but I run it by God first, and He just let me know this space was available to me, and really put this job right in front of me. And when I messaged my future boss, who's my boss now, she immediately responded and was just so amazing and so sweet, and let me know that she first read my post. But sometimes on LinkedIn, you don't even know if the person read it. She
right.
read it and also reviewed the resume. And days later, they contacted me for an interview. So it worked out beautifully.
It's a good fit because she was open to it. I mean, I think that's awesome. All right. We digress a little bit. So let's get back to, because I know everybody wants to know, in your mind, what makes employers military friendly?
Oh, definitely. For me, military friendly employers are military inclusive. They provide opportunities that promote parity and diversity. Their expression of appreciation to the military affiliated community is steadfast in their attempt to provide resources that are dedicated to the military community. They provide networking opportunities. They don't keep military affiliated folks on one level. They give them opportunities to grow, whether that's showing mentorship, providing financial opportunities for military related organizations like your organization and others. They really highlight what the military affiliated community does, and they don't keep us in one level. They share that there are opportunities for growth. So for me, it's inclusive, and they recognize equity and diversity.
And I think that's really important to note too, because I think a lot of people hear DIJ or um um and they just think, oh, it must be racial or gender. And you're like, no, it also includes the military. Like
That
that's diversity in and of itself, is they make space for military. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think a lot of it is, when I look at some of the military friendly employers, some of them also have affinity programs where you can, seek mentors or peers within the organization to help you. Of course, yours is like loaded with it, student veterans, but but for others, it exists as well. So I think that's really important that people understand when we're talking about parity and diversity, we're looking at opportunities for military connected folks.
exactly, definitely.
No, these are great points. And so I can't believe, and we threatened this. We're like, oh my gosh, we're both fast talkers. We're gonna just breeze through this interview. But since we do have some extra time, I'm going to give you an opportunity, and I hope you're open to it. But I'd love to hear any closing thoughts or tips you have for military spouse professionals whose members may find themselves nearing separation or retirement. Like what can they do to have a smoother transition? Because short of entering a military lifestyle, if you've never been around military people before, this is probably the next biggest daunting thing, right? Is the
Yes.
transition out of the lifestyle. So what can they do to have a smoother transition?
Oh, great question, Sue. For me, it's three things. The very first one is attend those transition classes with your spouse. The great thing now in 2024, like we mentioned earlier, programs are finally realizing, hey, the spouse is transitioning too. So they're dedicating a lot of the curriculum for military spouses. So attend those classes. We're Army, so we have a Soldier for Life Transition Assistance Program. When my husband is in that space, I will be sitting directly next to him with my notes, and I'm taking notes for the both of us. So definitely attend those classes for sure. The second would be definitely have a mentor. Like we mentioned, mentorship is so important. There are so many of us who have gone through the same things, and just having someone who can guide you and support you and find resources for you to help make that transition much easier. The other would be really create a binder. And this may sound crazy. I'm a teacher and I believe in organization. So have your binder that really has everything, whether it be your insurance information, financial information, even anything related to your future place that you're going to live. Have a binder that has everything organized. Organization is very much key when it comes to a successful transition.
No, I think you're exactly right. And my husband was Air Force. We live and die by checklists. I love a good checklist. But and you know, one
Definitely.
of the things I always recommend to people along the lines of what you were saying is as you're learning about resources, write it down and like write down the stage and the time when you need to engage with them. Because I think that one of the things that people tend to do is age themselves out of a resource because they didn't look at the eligibility timeline. And so thanks for bringing that up. I think that's really, really important. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for sharing a little bit about what it's like to work in a nonprofit. And it sounds like you're really enjoying the leap from education to nonprofits.
I absolutely love it. I'm telling you, Student Veterans of America is an organization that really sees us for who we are. While it's considered Student Veterans of America, they really are supporting the entire family unit. And like we mentioned before, you cannot support the veteran if you don't support the family. So I'm so excited to have been given an opportunity to work for an organization that really sees me for who I am and who I desire to be.
And we're really excited that you were there because you're a great advocate and a representative for military spouses. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you for having me. This has been such an honor to meet with you today.
Absolutely. And I hope to continue to stay in touch. But you guys, if you have a story like Angelica's, we hope that you will share. We hope that you will apply for a highlight because we would love to hear your stories. And thank you to our friends over at USAA for making these conversations possible. And I hope to see you here next week. Bye, guys.